witnessed in January of 2024, almost the same water elevations that we're seeing, on the narrative view of the site is what we see from the photographs and just the discussions that we've had. And so what we're going to be doing that's a little different tonight, again, is really focusing in on the town dock area. And we've come up with strategies of how to adapt the site based on the assets that are there. But again, Jared put this together to say, let's get more of the community input specific to this site and have your feedback. So, we could look at the site and say, well, from the engineering perspective, maybe move the bathroom to a different location. But what we heard in January was, no. The bathroom is a really important asset for the community where it is. So our job is to say, how can we adapt it? And then what we're going to give you the opportunity to is really think about how you use the space, where we should start to prioritize the adaptation strategies. And you'll see that you have a map with some icons on the table. And this is, a chance for you to act as a planner and work with the people at your table to say, well, I'd like to get rid of parking and put in more green space and some, it gives you an idea to see how would you want to see the site redeveloped in the context of future flooding and the use of the site. And so Noel will be facilitating some discussion questions before we get to that. And then we're gonna have an open discussion with everyone in the room, folks online. And we'll just kind of summarize what we're hearing. And then the next steps for us are to go back and really hone in on these adaptation strategies. Maybe, nothing is set in stone, it's just as the engineers and scientists we're working with in a toolbox, and I'll walk through kind of some of the ideas of what we're thinking of for adaptation strategies of what is there now. That's not to say that what we hear tonight is going to change those ideas that we've come up with. So, next slide, or a couple slides now. Next slide. Yeah, so I kind of went over a bit of this, but just the project overview again, it's just the flood risk that we're looking at, not just in the short term, what is in January, but also thinking, ahead of 2050, 2100, getting your feedback, coming up with some conceptual adaptation, which will be part of our final report that we have. And then that gives the town the opportunity to say, we've heard from the community, and now we hear that whatever asset may come out of, or assets come out of this, Ina, Derek can kind of start to look for funding sources or prioritize where, what we heard most, this is an asset that we really want to elevate or what have you. So this is the point of why we're here tonight and the point of the report. So next slide, please. It's over to Elon.
Hi everybody, I'm Elon. I'm a water resources engineer with JDI, and I did some of the flood modeling for this project. So what we have up here is a map of the 1% annual chance flooding. You might also call this the 100-year storm. The 100-year storm is a storm that happens every 100 years. It's a storm that has a 1 in 100 chance of happening every year. So this is very similar to what you saw last January in 2024. We would call that a 100-year storm. So this is all flooding that you experienced. But now what we're going to start to look at is what flooding you might experience in the future as sea levels rise. So on the next slide, we'll be looking at the existing HAT inundation. HAT is the highest astronomical tide. You might call it the king tide, the tide you might see twice a year. So you can expect this level of flooding with current sea levels to happen once or twice a year. But as we go on to the next slide, and as sea levels rise in 2050, you'll see the inundation, the flooding, just slowly approaches inland. So this is 2050, and the next slide you'll see 2070, moves further inland, and then here's 2100. So when we talk about planning for the future, planning for flood inundation in the future, these are the scenarios we like to keep in mind as the water gets closer and closer inland and starts to take up that space where we have the parking lot, gets closer to Daniel Murphy's, and takes up those spaces that we are normally used to using on a regular basis. This is the inundation we might see once or twice a year with the king tide. Next slide.
Melody, no. I was gonna add.
Back to this.
So as we look at the town dock area, and again, internally at GDI, as we think about the engineering strategies that we have, these are the assets that we've highlighted. So starting with A being the pump station, and I know that there are, you're working on making some improvements there. The bathroom. We don't have a restaurant on here, but that is another asset that we want to consider. Stormwater drains, those are important as, Cascine goes downhill. So a lot of stormwater is coming through that area at times. We have the harbor master's office, the boat ramp, the town dock, the bulkhead, an outfall, and the Acadia dock. And so, next slide, please. Again, this is a little bit of a refresher from when we were here in January, but just to kind of give you the tools working within when we think of adaptation, these are the common categories. So, no response. We can just wait and see what happens. Maybe a storm will come, maybe it won't. It's kind of like what a lot of people, towns that we were working with this winter, we're just sort of, waiting to see if another storm is going to come and actively planning in the meantime. Advance. So this is a little bit of why would we ever go towards the ocean? And one idea here is, and I talked about this last time, is I know that with Maine Maritime building out their pier and the town maybe having the potential to add in maybe future floats to extend out some of that docking capacity. You could think about advancing out with those floats being concrete floats. So they're not going to address the flooding, but they will act as a wave attenuation device for some of the wave action that could come from these larger coastal source. So that's one way that you would advance. Protection, and that's your bulkhead, your revetment. Some towns have a breakwater, retreating, moving back. So, are there assets on the town dock area that you think, well, they could be located elsewhere? As an example, like parking. There's, and this is just a suggestion. I don't want in any way to say that this is what, we're putting on paper here, but, you could look at, okay, what's our critical capacity for parking? Could we relocate some of that parking to a different location, maybe open up some green space or floodable green space is what kind of a buzz term these days, where we can, turn an area in so it's designed to still be used, but at times during flooding, it's going to be floodable. We have accommodation. So this would be like the bathroom, hearing that that's an important asset down at the water. We could elevate it there. And so that's accommodating. And then ecosystem-based adaptation. And this would be more like one of the considerations I had is with the bulkhead that you have there now, and just the way that you look at the different elevations on site, the lowest part is right along that bulkhead. If you were to elevate the bulkhead, sometimes regulatory agencies, you have to really provide them with an avoidance and minimization. Why you need to elevate it? I think we could demonstrate that in this situation. But in order to kind of think about, well, how could a bulkhead maybe help with some ecosystem-based adaptation? There's some really cool technologies called living. They're basically like these large concrete structures that you put onto a bulkhead. It's a vertical structure, it doesn't get a lot of habitat for benthic organisms. These kind of allow you to have that rough side, so it's like it creates habitat and as well as giving you the ability to elevate a structure and provide some resiliency. So again, these are just techniques that are out there and they're ever evolving, and so we can go to the next slide. I think it's just a slower test. Yeah, so as I mentioned, so we've come up with some ideas, and again, some of these are, not the most, like, I would say exciting, but there are ways that we can adapt to the town dock area to provide for these future flood scenarios. So, but we basically broken this into short term being 0 to 5 years, and then longer term, so 5 to 10 plus years to consider. I have my hand handy. Here we go. So this is starting again with the assets as we delineate them. A being the pump station, elevate basically any key pump station, infrastructure that you have there. You can seal, dry flood proof, essentially just making sure water doesn't get into that building. Same for the bathrooms, you could either just keep it in place or, as we thought through this, we thought as you elevate the bathroom as a potential adaptation strategy, we heard last time about having kayak racks or bike racks. That would give you an opportunity if you're elevating a bathroom to kind of use that space underneath as, a resource. Temporary road barriers, so this is something, as you think through, it's not always just let's put infrastructure in the ground, it's an alert system, it's emergency system, so a storm's coming, you don't want people down there, install these temporary road barriers to prevent people from using the area. Backflow preventer on the outflow, so this, outflow, excuse me, and that's where, kind of when you go underneath by the bulkhead at low tide, you can see those outfalls, and that's just an engineering practice that prevents the water from getting up in through there and coming back up into the parking area. You could install, or elevate and install a through-flow foundation on the harbor master's office. That's another potential there is to, potentially relocate it, but again, that's a pretty key location for the harbor master, to be kind of part of the action of the town, so not necessarily higher on our priority to relocate that. You could regrade and extend the boat ramp. It's a tricky location for a boat ramp, and I know that maybe in the past there's been some talk of maybe trying to get additional adjacent land, like easement or something. I mean, that's something maybe town could pursue again. And then in that case, you could maybe, regrade it to make it a little more user-friendly. Some of these, again, are these engineering techniques, upgrade the gangway top connections, and so that's just where your gangway connects to the bulkhead essentially. You can elevate that, and so that kind of helps prevent with flood uplift forces. I think my number one priority in all of this is assessing the bulkhead. I think, these ideas are very important to consider, but I think first and foremost, that's almost like your foundation. And so I think we want to have some sort of assessment to say, what is the condition of that bulkhead? And get on a regular, inspection plan about every 5 years. And if any damage needs to be repaired, that should be, considered first and foremost. And then again, other two are just related to what I've already mentioned. So next slide. Yeah, just
Back one more.
yeah, so the other one kind of talks about long-term, and then, some of these are larger projects that would require more funding, but it would be elevating parts of the parking. If you're on site and you're looking at the elevations, again, the lower section is right along the water. Let's say you were to elevate the bulkhead, that would be another larger infrastructure type of project. You elevate the bulkhead, and in turn, in the upland, you could increase the elevation of the parking lot so it sort of meets the higher point that's there now. Elevate the bathroom we talked about, relocate the harbor master's office. Let's say maybe you look at this and say, let's look at other alternative sites for the boat ramp, if that's an option. Maybe it makes sense to relocate the harbor masters. These are just ideas that we are throwing out there. Again, I want to really collect the feedback tonight to hear where your priorities are. We have the tools from the engineering, the science, the planning, but I think the community is really, really valuable in all of this. But a lot of this comes down to elevating some of these structures. So, next slide.
Question?
Yes.
When you say elevate, how many vertical feet are you talking when things are now?
Well, we would have to assess that, but I mean, on average, like the bulkhead, for an example, you would want to go, 3 feet maybe above where it is now, just to give you an idea of the number.
For the short term?
Well, that's a larger infrastructure project, but yes, so when you look at those flood maps, like the 2050, 2070, these walls have a lifespan. So even though you're looking at 2100 where maybe the sea, level is much higher, for a project of that scope and knowing the lifespan that you would have for a bulkhead, I think, that would give you 50 years, and then you would run maybe as you replace it. And it's not necessarily replacing it. Like we did a project down in Portland, in the harbor there, on one of the working waterfront wharves. An old bulkhead, similar to what you have here, and instead of like tearing it out and putting in new, you can oversheet it with like just putting in the steel sheet pile in front of that. So it gives you, it's less site disturbance. It's still not, just to give a sense of cost, it was about, I want to say it was 400 feet or 40 feet. I have to now, like, what is that number? But it was about a $4 million project. So it's, it's just to give you a scope of what we're talking about. I believe it was 40 feet. 400 feet would be quite large. So those are our ideas. That's what we've been working on, coming up with some kind of concept ideas on that. And now what we want to do is, again, take it to the next step with you guys here, hearing from everyone. We do have an online survey. We're having some technical difficulties with that, but we'll have that available after tonight too. And, if you need some time to digest, we can also collect some feedback that way. But I'm going to hand it over to Noel to sort of facilitate, hearing back from you now.
Thank you. All right, well, one of the things that we wanted to do is just sort of refresh memories of the meeting that we had in January and talk a little bit about some of the common themes and comments that came out of that meeting. So the first one really is thinking about, we asked basically kind of 3 questions for this good discussion. So one of the first ones was, what are the key waterfront assets at large? And so what kind of came out of that was, the idea that you have a lot of important natural features like the deep water harbor, protected ledges, and those kinds of things that really bring a lot of value to the harbor itself. There's also the cultural and institutional anchors like MMA or the working waterfront and recreational boating heritage is really important part of the harbor. And then there's the built and social character elements, so like the water street connection, the continuity of the shoreline, open nature of the public waterfront, and then more of a holistic vision, sort of emphasizing, those built social characters and those kinds of things. So the other question we asked was, what are the current uses of the town wharf, town dock? These are some of the themes that came out of that. So the recreational boaters and visitor uses, like the dinghy dock, gas, pump out, safe harbor access, the Maine Maritime Academy use or connectivity, the community and tourism access for kayaking, swimming, or walking. It's used for public events like hosting fireworks, or concerts, or festivals. Commercial and tour operations, public access, providing that visual and physical access to the harbor. Then we spent quite a bit of time what are some themes for improvements. So really thinking about infrastructure improvements, reviewing the concrete dock and bulkheads, as Lisa mentioned, expanding the dinghy dock, thinking about ramp and float upgrades, or thinking about enhanced amenities at the dock, ability and access improvements like pedestrian connectivity, parking elsewhere in town, better bicycle infrastructure and stuff like that. Use flexibility, so considering how do you make this space more multi-use? What are some of the aesthetic and community enhancements that we can consider? Seating, and other amenities. There's an economic development coordination element that came out of that. So how do we emphasize the role of the town dock along the waterfront and use that as an asset or an anchor for the community? And then really thinking about the planning perspective. So that's kind of the long-term thinking about the town dock. So how do we maybe take advantage of this opportunity that we have here together to think a little bit differently than just what's the status quo, and think about what this place could be. And that really leads us to why we're here tonight, which is to do a little bit of a conversation, as Lisa mentioned in the beginning, about how do we maybe think outside the box a little bit. So we're going to do some group exercises. I know everybody's got the maps and the flip charts and markers, and we have crayons too. If anybody wants to get creative, we can do a lot of that. But we want to hear from you a little bit. So we're going to do this in 2 stages. We're going to talk about, in the first kind of group exercise is really a series of 3 questions, and they're meant to be kind of broad questions. We want you to discuss those questions in your group. We're gonna take maybe 20 minutes to do that, and you have 3 questions, so maybe 5 to 6 minutes for each question. And then we're gonna share the answers back with everybody, so we can kind of learn from one another. And then we're gonna have another exercise, which is more of a mapping exercise. So you guys are the designers, that's where you have the little icons, where you have the map, markers, those kinds of things, and really put your planning hat on and help us think about different scenarios for the town. So that's what we're going to do. And then for those of you who are, or those of you who are online, we also have the ability to follow along with the first 3 questions. We don't hear some feedback from online. And then, as Lisa mentioned, there is a survey. I'm sure, Derek, are you still going to try to facilitate the online survey during this time, so that we have a little bit of an interactive. So what we're going to do is probably end up having to combine a couple of tables. But we want you to start, everybody should have on your table, this right here, something that, I think there are 2 copies on each table, something that looks a little bit like this. And that's your worksheet. So the first thing we're gonna do is small group part 1, which is the 3 questions, which are, what role should the town dock play in testing the future? What types of experiences should the waterfront provide year round? And what values should guide decision making when balancing access, infrastructure, upgrades, and environmental changes that we're experiencing? So spend a little bit of time talking about those amongst yourselves. We're going to be wandering around the room, and then we're going to get back together in about 20 minutes.
You probably just made the tour they live without apartment. There's some basic little things. But to me, again, this is more of an opportunity. 2050 the next one. So I don't know if that's a value, but I just think that we need to save the here and now. So, but then there's the global thermal bigger. Yeah, I think 100 years. I'm not going to worry about it too much. We're not gonna.
Well, you did mention it, the infrastructure would last. You're
gonna make a change, try to make the change for the future.
I see there's 2 tiers. One is to just get the bathroom and whatever the basic infrastructure under control, whatever that means. And then I think that's 2050. What does it look like this thing? So again, to me, it looks like an old parking lot. Next year, we're interested in then they housing, very loud. You know, it seems to me that a lot of opportunity to really think bigger, like saving the food.
He is the primary access to the baggage of water. And so water is the testing is the only real commercial activity based location.
Nice.
And if we're going to think about long term, then highlighting that a environmental piece that makes it unusual and interesting.
Thanks. You might want to grab a marker too.
Okay, hold on.
Let's go around the table. You guys don't need to go like deep dive into everything that you wrote out, but I am kind of curious to hear from everybody what you came up with for the 3 questions. So let's hear from this table, and we're just going to work our way around this way. How about you guys? What is something that you came up with for?
There it goes.
All right. Morning, Mike.
No.
All right. Let's try it again.
So one of the things that we had for the first category was
bathrooms and group bathrooms and bathrooms for boaters.
Yep.
So with showers and laundry and those kinds of things, that would be probably a good thing to think about. Make sure we have good places to eat. Parking seems like it's pretty important. Does it always need to be? Maybe there are other ways to address it, but if people can't access the waterfront, then it's a difficult thing to use. Maintaining tourism and the visiting people to the town, welcoming them. Improving or expanding the dinghy space and the usable area of the waterfront. And adding wave attenuation, some sort of control for storm surge and all that kind of stuff.
Great, how about the other two? Feel free to, please, right there.
So for year-round stuff, a lot of the same stuff is, I think, relevant. We're talking still about parking, and probably as an extension of, the way that it's used now in the off-season. MMA does a lot of that. So again, there may be other ways to address that, and maybe there are good ways to address it. That's part of what we need, I think, is good access. Again, I think some year-round places to eat would be great. Maybe permanent floats that don't need to be removed, aren't seasonal, but stay in year-round. And again, bathrooms, it would be great to have a year-round public restroom down there. And number 3 is really, we just want to kind of be able to use this the way that we use it now into the future. Allow people to enjoy it, allow people to experience it, whether you live here or visit here. We want to be good neighbors to our neighboring properties, to MMA, to private landowners adjacent. And by doing that, maybe there's an expectation that our neighbors are good neighbors. And we can sort of enter into an endeavor that that makes this kind of development an extension of the use of this place possible.
Great, excellent, thank you. How about that table? And feel free to walk up and steal the mic if you want.
We don't do all of that, let's comment debate. One of the things we wanted to focus on was a bit of the weather/sun areas
Okay.
for residential use.
Yep.
Water and docking access for tourists, so an emphasis on bringing in tourism from the water versus Route 1. And if we're going to put all this money and effort into this place, how do we use it year round? Do we use it as an event space? Like bazaars, stuff like that, but if we improve the bathrooms and make them so they can be used years round, and we bring an interest into our downtown waterfront, beyond just July and August. Number 2. So like year round, people do that. We were talking about that. One of the things that I need was the folk storage down, and they said it looked like an unattractive storage facility in winter. So let's try to find another, either maybe year-round footing ones with a lack of icebreakers, or with a lack of ice flow that we've had, cold winter.
Yep.
Or perhaps utilize a transfer station, place to transfer them to. And the number 3, I can't remember what the question was, but you wrote down.
Yes.
Maintaining costs, keeping costs down, being sensible.
Great, thank you. How about you guys? Back row.
I'll start with number 1. We felt that the town dock should be a focal point for collaboration between the town and its adjacent neighbors, and I may particularly.
wrestling with is the short term, I believe, was stated as 2050, but then within your presentation, you started talking about 0 to 5 years and 5 to 10. So I think there's a little bit of like, which horizon are we really focused on? I think that we had a discussion here about, well, there's the obvious need of the very immediate of saving the toilets and whatever else. Hiking up the harbor master office, which is the here and now thing. But the real 100-year opportunity, which is really, I think, the 2050 and beyond, is what something interesting can you really do with this plot now that we're talking about, but then also again, the MMA cooperation, which then expands the asset quite a bit. So how does that play out? And that's very different than just, you know, the presentation.
Sure, maybe can I just deal with that real quick? I think the difference between the two scenarios is one, these are sea level rise scenarios that we're looking at, the 2050 or 2100 scenarios. So this is what is projected for the flooding implications in those timeframes. And then the short-term scenarios that Lisa mentioned right after that are things that you could really focus on these things in the short term for this property to prepare to like address the things that are happening now and prepare yourself for some other things. So like there are two different type of prioritizations, I guess, if you will. But I think your point is really interesting, and that's part of why we're here today, is to really think about okay, how do you think about this property, aside from like, here's the way it is today. And I know a lot of what I'm walking around the room, what's been really interesting is to say, we want it to kind of be the same as it is today. But I think the question is, how do we think a little bit bigger, and how do we make it the same, but also address some of the environmental things that we need to do? And that's what the third question kind of comes in, is what values does the town need to be looking at as it's making decisions about how to respond to some of these things? So, sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so then, I guess, what types of experiences should the waterfront, or I guess, what type, number two, what type of experience? We sort of recognize that the Cascade is sort of the commercial access point for the entirety of the values watershed. And that has opportunities throughout the whole region where we are central to that access. And we want to support sort of the commercialization of it, but it needs to be moderate. It can't be overwhelming. Because when you drive down Main Street and you look out at the harbor, you don't want to see a whole bunch of flags flying, selling you stuff.
Right. Got it.
And you don't want to see, and I'm speaking very personally, I don't want to see food trucks in front of the harbor either.
Yep.
And so we need to think about the layout of where these pieces should be, so that we have that visual and receptiveness to the values watershed. The reason the harbor.
Great.
Which then the values.
Stewardship. Yeah. Good. All right. How about you guys? Back row.
Professional standards, quickly on the waterfront being the focal point of Cascade and sort of casual visually, as well as being highly functional, so not giving up any of the function that people value, but also enhancing the highlight the beauty of Cascade. And we agree with so much of what you all are saying, I just don't want to be repetitive. For the experience, thought about, we have so many different populations, summer residents, tourists, and so this space is flexible to serve different populations at different times. A great idea. Christmas market, making sure that we're thinking about all those populations and how to support our businesses as well, so we're not hurting the experiences of the business as we think about, what we're doing here. And the value that we have to back to is a sense of community and quality of life. Everyone who lives or visits here, including accessibility, for all of the people who, want to move on.
Cool, great, thank you. Middle row.
Alright, so yeah, we shared a lot of the same, have lots of comments we have the tables that's spoken to already. The question one, was interested in, not having that space be dominated by a parking lot, but thinking collaboratively about other parking opportunities. Maybe partnerships with the academy, where, parking spaces available there in the summer when students are not present. Opportunities there, that could evolve. We also looked at physical access of the town dock, knowing that everybody's project is extending their pier out a couple hundred feet. You know, if we were to look at something like that for the town, what would that mean for adding slips, bringing more boaters in, using that as an economic resource that might allow some more economic use, more economic vitality to the town, knowing that there's a geographic space for residents and homes and things to be built is limited. And number one, number two, we talked a little bit about, is it possible to have a walkway, pedestrian walkway, MMA property down, you know, from MMA down past the. There's no other opportunity for that. And then the values, we talked about respecting and maintaining historical legacy, development changes, protecting town, storms, sea rise, and then also maintaining.
Great. Excellent. Do you guys have anything you want to add that's different than what we've already heard?
Pretty much the same, I think, one, Peter mentioned, I think, just was to expand. Another story, because we've got so much of a tiny little space, so many demands on it.
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting idea, to expand it out, also give us some more protection. Bulkheading, I thought was key takeaways, I guess, in the whole project is raising the bulkhead, strengthening what we got, resilience, wave attenuation. I thought it was really good ideas, meant floats that are left out in more year round, so we knock some of these waves down. I think that everything else is contingent upon having a strong structure, the structure, forget about everything else.
Yep.
Gone.
Yep.
One good storm, done. So I think you really have to fortify it in the forefront, either expand it out. There's a lot of ground on it. That's number one.
Great.
I think what Amy said, what he said is the biggest thing that sort of one Amy mentioned of it was expand and go out. And I think that's something the town needs to do in order to make more space, because the way you're gonna do it. You take out parking, people can't walk there.
Yep.
And we go back and then other stuff is if you go 50 feet or 100 feet, then you need land. If the government wants to do it. I think that's something the town really needs to look into.
Yep. So a lot of common themes really going around, a lot of different uses, a lot of different ideas, but working closely with your neighbors, stewardship, maybe expanding out. I've heard that a couple of times. It's really interesting comments. So now I think we're going to move on to the next exercise, which is really kind of exciting for me, but you guys get to actually go and I've been holding you back. I've been holding this table back over here. They're ready to go. So for this exercise, each small group is supposed to work together to create a concept or a layout or a vision for how the dock area could function in the future. So you've got a base map, you've got some sticky notes, you've got some icons on your tables, you've got markers. So draw maps. Write down what you think you should think about circulation.
I have no idea what the, so you could build a big deck here. We still have water. That's a nightmare for me. Should we just draw that? Okay. You want this to go out? What the hell, why not? I'm gonna draw something like that. I'm not gonna cut off their gravel.
Think the Army Corps is gonna let us build that much?
If you want to kick some of these off. The intake was a lot nicer. Do you want to draw in our, read tomorrow?
I like that idea, and some of the Army Corps.
No, we are.
Piece of property, so. Maybe.
You could be playing there. So there's some concern.
Yeah.
So.
I think what people are talking about, which is interesting to me, and I think something that we should try to figure out, is when you're coming down Main Street, to make this, anyway, right? At least this, or something here, green, or pleasing to the eye.
This is the camera.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, right? But you have to go down the hill.
Yeah, eventually, I think so.
Green,
The craft vegetation.
Yes, it can be spotted around.
Well, I think I would really like to move a lot of that parking lot. But
That's why I brought green, because that's what this is about. I kind of agree. I think green would be better down there somewhat, but
why is that not part of the discussion, I guess?
what, moving parking?
Yeah.
I think it can be part of it. I think that's one of the things that'll come up, you know?
Nowhere else.
Well, I mean, again, if there's, I mean, I think this is really interesting. Here, this is not. Yeah, I mean, if that's not a.
This area, that's all the food trucks be and there should be.
And a flagpole.
I think there should be a lawn. I work
Derek,
on
let
my
me ask
sun
you this.
can, yeah.
You know, I don't know, but they were talking about moving the toilets somewhere here or something. What's going on here? There's like a rehab or
That was
something.
that building they removed in the middle there, that, and, MMA's talking about putting stairs or something in there, and I've said, geez, there might be a better public use, but that's, you know, something that I think we need to push for is, hey, that would be a perfect place for bathrooms and whatever. We also looked at with the new C Street pump station, whether we can incorporate the bathrooms. It's too much trouble for that project to do it, but we'd have to look at stuff. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think.
Pretty tight there.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows, right? I mean, if you design it differently.
Want to make more. I mean, this whole facility had bathrooms right on top here. That
Yeah,
whole
that-
pavilion space has, it's underutilized.
Well,
Oh, really?
then you got the old building there that MMA may remove one day, may do something with.
That's this.
Right, so that potentially could do something.
And bathrooms right up at that.
Oh, they do?
Right at the steps, at the ramp that goes
And
out.
there's concession stand there? I've never been up there.
Laid out.
Well, that is one of the reasons I asked for President to be here, Peter to be here, because MMA could be part of a public, I guess, public cooperation thing for that, so. Good work, guys, keep dreaming. Hey,
But a lot of departments.
You need fellows, they already have two fellows operating two fellows on the dock.
The tours.
The tours, yeah, but you can also have them
We could
go
do-
pick people up, the busy times like weekends. Just think of the weekends.
I see that, good, yeah, I like that.
Entry.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, you have that lot there that's vacant up there where the Acadia used to be, so you guys are looking at that, right, yeah.
Yeah, there's already trees there blocking the speed anyways. Leave those trees there. But
Yeah,
Here. Do we know who owns this?
I think 3 different people own it, I think it's in 3 different sections, but I haven't looked, I haven't got that far. But, yeah. Good work. I like the green space ideas there in the front. I was just calling them a place for me to tan, See what we're doing over here for dreaming? I know.
yeah.
There you go. You're right. I like it.
Chinese restaurant up there.
So what-
Parking, right? Yeah. Oh, there you go. Look, you guys are all hitting on that stuff. Those ideas, yeah.
So we don't have to do it on the day, right? Well, it flooded last time. That's not quite the same. Almost.
Peter, I heard at another place over there that on top of, where's the street? Over here, maybe there's some plumbing already there for public bathrooms, potentially near a snack bar type of thing over here. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. That's giving you guys thoughts that I heard in other places that they had mentioned, so. I think they're talking about a public partnership is what I think I heard.
Must be raised.
You guys don't want me, you want to have a conversation, I'll come back. Oh, all right. I've been visiting everybody to see what you're coming up with for ideas.
Halfway through it.
All right,
The backhoes are coming.
right. All right, that's good.
We're moving things around. We want more land.
Rob,
Give me land.
that, you're not the only one that I've seen doing that, and, I'm guessing this becomes some land too. Oh, no, you haven't done anything with that yet. Oh, yeah, so that's false advertising. That's not in play yet. You haven't used those yet. All right.
We're working on things. We're gonna move the small shed and Captain Tech, but
Yeah.
but the problem because they get hit pretty hard. So
Right.
we don't know if we want to do it. We're gonna elevate this whole thing up.
Okay.
And we're gonna raise the bulkhead. So
Yeah, the Army Corps will let us fill all that in between. That'd be a perfect thing. It'll happen at midnight, right? Right. All right, I'll leave you guys to your. Oh, you guys got more? All right. All right. Well, I'm visiting every group, so. Yes.
Spinach on. I had a guy in this town who built a whole business around fire extinguishers. For marinas.
Yeah.
All over the world. They have no capability on that dock right now. It could be on wheels.
Yeah.
Phone.
All right, that's a good idea.
Galley.
Good point. Make sure you guys mention that when you do the summary. All right, let's check back with you guys, see what you guys have done.
No big pier, a Y shape. Redone ramp.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I like that. I looked at that one day like that. Yeah.
Attenuating to. Oh, no.
What is the grass? Oh, see, everybody keeps putting the grass monopoly pieces in the middle of the ocean, and I'm like, so we're gonna fill in that, put grass up there? But no. Oh, okay.
I do think that
I think you're thinking dune grass.
we're increasing the size of it. It doesn't need to be for cars and salt, whatever.
Oh, okay.
Like part of it. Maybe this is
Okay, yeah.
more of a green grass part of sort of scenario.
Yeah, that's where you pick a table.
These are long planters or, big pots of green. Yeah, I don't know what.
Drawing it down. Oh.
This thing's gonna be up 9 feet higher than back here. Are you locking it all in? But how are you gonna keep the water from washing in there in 2100? All right, that's the next generation.
I think we should be thinking.
Flood barriers, okay.
It could be good at 2050. The 2100, you just raise it.
Yeah, but if we're developing this at a certain level, wouldn't we want to look back out as far as we can?
So that in 50 years, you can raise.
It's an incremental, it follows the sea level.
Yeah. Maybe. Higher, get the whole new deck. We probably need a new deck.
See, so you guys know what I want to do, although I like more green space in here, is, and I just found out Dan Mascotti did this. I want to put a big flood vault under this, so no matter what you do for barriers, anything that gets in, go into the flood vault, it can be pumped out before it floods. It's too serious. Well, I know. Well, I'm not questioning that, but Dan Mascotti, their whole parking lot down there, their whole main street, when it goes down to go across the bridge to, I forget the other town. It's on the other side there, but their whole thing is it's got a big flood vault underneath it now. And theirs is worse than any scenario I've seen because their whole downtown from one side of the river, the other side when you go across, it's underwater in 2100. So I don't know if they've got big things, but Lake Pontchartrain or whatever had huge flood pumps too, right? Right. Yeah. So it's not unheard of, you know. Maybe really expensive. I'm gonna check in with other people. You guys.
Ward wells mostly. How did you remember that?
They own all. Yeah, they own all.
Big pump station.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Oh, yeah. Have to go.
Actually, just so you know, the pump station's going great where it is.
No, what area is
So that Maine Maritime property, and they haven't really decided what they're gonna do there. One thing I heard was they may put some stairs down to the waterfront there. They may do something else. Right.
They do, they do.
That needs to go back to keep.
You know, they're not going, I don't wanna go down there, you find, you gotta park, stop and.
Yeah.
You know.
So they're probably. No.
Yeah, I'm not trying to crash back, but there is parking there now. Well, not if you have like. They were talking. Yeah. Similar, these are big parking. Door. I do.
Doing my traveling road show.
Perfect. Awesome.
Well, I'm not actually. So.
Here.
So this is a project that we're all, I know, sorry, to introduce it. So it's a project that was part of, the Greater Portland Council of Governments. They did a private red coast for Castle Bay, and they looked at different types of development along the water. And I'm just, Derek's gonna pull up an image, and so what they've defined as a working waterfront, so,
I get it, it's not all the slides. Slow, make it immediate. Right, wait.
Okay, here we go. So this is just sort of as an example. This is a working waterfront area that in some ways is very similar to the town back area. You can just go back aside. So this is showing you, parking, you have the sheet pile wall that goes around, you have the floats. And as they think about sea level rise, it's a little hard to see on here, but there's a predicted sea level rise that basically runs almost through the middle of the property. And as they, this is a rendering, so this is not actually a site that's under construction, but you can.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, sorry. Oh, gotcha. Am I going to?
No,
Okay. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so this is sort of an idea as we think of the town dock, you know, getting rid of some of that. And again, this is just a rendering as ideas as you think through adaptation planning, the possibilities. So adding in more green space, taking out some of the parking, they've added in stormwater improvements, they've added in, you know, different float configuration. They have this living sea walls I was mentioning before, with the floating docks. Reduced impervious, and then one of the things, I think a big theme here tonight is parking, and, you know, obviously it's an important asset that we have to consider. In this case, what they've done here is to show that there's a shuttle that you can have some, you know, off-site parking, and it will still allow people to come to the water. And they have some restored salt areas and so forth, but, and they do utilize the floats as a wave attenuation, device as well. So, just an idea as we think through and kind of the next phases of this project. We will have some concept designs, but you know, rendering is maybe a future phase to consider as we get some more of these ideas kind of summarized and put together. But what we want to do is just briefly go around the room, and we want to keep your maps as they are, because we want to get pictures of them. So I don't know, we can start here at the first table, just kind of talk about some of the, you know, highlights of what you're considering. These guys had a really great idea for, I thought, the boat launch. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, so we're thinking of keeping the boat launch more or less where it is, but just changing the angle of it. And we're able to do that because we're either moving parking completely out of here with an underground parking garage that happens up the road, or we're adding enough area on a pile-supported wharf that we could actually park some more cars with an advancement strategy where we're building out into the harbor. We're adding wave attenuating concrete floats, and what else are we doing, guys? That's about it. That's as far as we got.
Green space.
Oh, right. Part of that wharf might contain eateries, you know, amenities, and more of like a sort of a park than just a big wide open wharf.
Or your people here.
Yeah, some planting and vegetation somehow.
All right, people.
Well, ours is a little bit bigger than theirs, but, it was the same concept.
Yeah.
Same.
You know, basically, well, yeah, just push it down, bring in dirt, bring in rock, build it up.
We were hoping to see, along the, with a walking path, the beach access along the MMA waterfront down. We certainly want to expand the harbor, not more with year-round floats and greater attenuation, get the floats out of the parking lot. A little more green space extending from the triangle that's under the flag triangle down the center of the parking lot. We had some ideas of opening up access to the boat ramp by changing the corner of the field. We were thinking a music venue and expanding the gazebo size out over the top area for use. Potentially longer seasonal use to we have lots of questions about MMA facilities with Andrews, which is a building right on the waterfront. Maybe that could be parking below with additional marine interpretive centers or welcome centers. the reason, yeah, there was some questions about the existing rooftop facility over basement, Rogers. There's also the integration lots between the Derico building and Rogers. We also thought might be bathroom, center, and green science.
And just kind of speaking on the MMA and, you know, the connectivity between the sites, I think, you know, initially when this was started, we, you know, reached out to and attended a town and gown to and say, hey, this project is going on. And I think as we move forward, what's going to be really helpful is to actually have some concept designs and then go back to MMA and say, here's where we're thinking, you know, what, and then open that conversation again with them and say, you know, what are your plans? What are you thinking? How can we connect these, you know, together? So, because it does seem like there's some really great opportunities there. So, but I think having more of a plan further along in place is also helpful to bring forward to, you know, neighboring properties too, not just MMA, and you have some of the restaurants and the, you know, other homeowners as well, so.
Yeah, we had questions about the vacant lots going in,
Next to the, yeah. We, in the discussions with the boat ramp there, it's a vacant lot.
No, this is up the hill.
Oh, up the hill, yeah, with the, I think Derek mentioned parking potentially. Private, yeah. Privately owned, okay. Back table?
Similar things that are discussed. Parking in the carousel area with Sally service for people who need that extra water. As the Civic Center expanded with water activity kiosks for ticket sales, especially some of them additional way to get out on the water for people because beauty testing is also on the water. Food trucks, food court off the parking lot to one side or the other, not the front. We rent a little parking lot, and two big trucks circle together in one. Towards the waterfront itself, extend the boardwalk that's already there, not wider. Put in some green space there with picnic tables and chairs and some grass vegetation. Park. Yeah, I was, you know, there's two good ways to do this in particular way for the season to be removed in the winter, so that you still have a parking lot. Floating food barges.
That's the thing.
Nice to have an outlet for lobster, whole lobster walk down. All got.
Great.
Yeah, so we kind of looked at the fact that it's eight in the report, with us talking about the project of the academy, and the shipments, these kind of facilities over there. So we were using the placement of the new ship to MMA to kind of guide us about building out the piers and adding slips and moving out into the water, recognizing that Tucson will be a couple hundred feet out, would give us maybe some space to build some infrastructure and increase the economy, economic opportunities, with slips. So we did some of that. We talked about moving the boat ramp, I guess, in this view that there's got to the left. And then maybe like moving the harbor master's house a little bit more to where the boat ramp is now, maybe trying to make the access to the boat ramp less tricky, maybe more accessible. Definitely want some green space and vegetation to help with, you know, storm surge and also just the attractiveness of the area. So with elevating certainly that area near the bulkhead, and then over on
on the left, where the restrooms currently are, thinking about, maybe a joint collaboration with MMA. They've got different bathroom facilities in their buildings down there, and we kind of combine them into a larger facility with laundry, something that would be heated or used during the winter months as well. And then for parking, we put kind of the upper left, just like looking towards the MMA during the summer is a potential collaboration to make use of parking. So I think pizza, we've got 400 parking spaces out of them, which are, not used regularly. Potential land.
Yeah. Great. Okay, stable.
A lot of what came up with similar ideas already mentioned, but the key idea here is to expand the ground. Okay, talking about filling in space. Currently, with the dinghy dock is expanding the height, I mentioned before, 3.5 to 4 feet of the sheet piles, and possibly go all the way over, also expand into the next area over here, same idea, fill that in. So that would give us a lot more room to do other things. Then moving out would be with the piers that are there on the similar setup on the inside for the dinghy dock. And currently we're thinking about expanding the dinghy dock out further on this side. So that would go along, and then wave attenuation out further to protect the whole system. The other ideas that were floated to mention the things about collaboration with MMA, I think those are great ideas. We can get some of that property there, shared property, that would solve a lot of problems. So start with where the space, if it's possible, it's not that it's a different ballgame. But if we could expand those spaces, it opens up a lot of opportunities.
Great. Thank you for the planning. This is really some great ideas. And yeah, we're just about ready to wrap up. I don't know if it's possible to get this. We did put a survey together, mainly for the online folks, as we kind of had these breakout sessions, technical difficulties. But Derek is going to have that available online after. So I guess in the town's waterfront dock we can pull it up here.
I got it.
Oh, if anybody wants, yeah, so this is a QR code that will take you to a survey. It's a lot of what we talked about tonight, but if you want to formalize and maybe take more on your thoughts too, this QR code again takes you to that survey and just some basic questions that you can have. And, you can reach out, we can send the link, but again, I can have it loaded on the town's website as well.
We have our contact information here for you.
Yeah, and I'll get that on Facebook or wherever.
Yeah, but are there any specific questions that anyone has that we want to?
What's your next step?
So the next step is we're going to compile all this information. We're going to go back at GEI to the drawing board, essentially, of putting together, what I hear, as I mentioned, no one here mentioned let's elevate the bulkhead, but I think as I mentioned in the start of this, one of our primary recommendations that will be consider at least, not elevating it, but getting an assessment of what the condition is. But then our next steps are to put some conceptual designs together. So a lot of what I heard too are the concrete floats, keeping those in year round, but I don't want to shoot off the cuff too much. I want to kind of sit and think and look at all the different information and collectively talk. And then we've started our report for this, just kind of outlining how, the science behind the flood inundation maps, how we got that. And then the next steps are to talk about our specific recommendations, incorporating this feedback. So, we're basically putting together the report, and then at that point, we'll send out a draft for Derek to review and the Harvard committee to review, and we can kind of make modifications from there, and then kind of present our findings. And then I think it'll give the town the opportunity to take that information and kind of think through maybe where the funding strategies would be and reaching out to MMA and keeping that conversation open.
Okay.